Welcome to Chinese History and Mythology.
Hello, friends! Welcome back to Chinese History and Mythology. In our previous episodes, we talked about the sweeping mythological saga of investiture of the gods, Jiang Ziya standing on the altar to infect the deities, King Wu of Zhou overthrowing the Shang Dynasty with the help of immortals and founding a new kingdom. Myths are decisive and clean. King Zhou of Shang is cruel and corrupt. Heaven shifts its mandate. King Wu attacks, wins, and that's the end. The final line is always something like, and from then on, the world was at peace. But myth is the ancient way of simplifying human affairs into grand themes. Loyalty versus betrayal, heaven's mandate versus tyranny. If we set aside the gods, the magic weapons, and the divine ranking list, if we peel away the fog of mythology and return to the real historical scene, you'll notice something very different. After King Wu defeated the Shang, his biggest challenges were not, how do we beat the last king? They were two much more complicated questions. First, the Zhou territory was now even larger than the Shang's. How do you manage such a huge space? Second, how do you stop yourself from repeating the same mistakes that destroyed the Shang dynasty? Myth ends at the world is finally peaceful, but history truly begins at the moment a new dynasty is founded. So today, we're walking out of the legendary world of divine enfeoffment and into the real world of governing an empire. We'll look at how the Zhou Dynasty, this kingdom that lasted nearly 8 centuries, started, expanded, and eventually exhausted itself. And along this path, we'll arrive at a very special book, the Book of Songs, the Shijing. From the rise and fall of a dynasty, we return to the love, longing, labor, and sorrow of ordinary people. Part 1. The Zhou Dynasty's chain store strategy, the feudal enfeoffment and clan system. In the long arc of Chinese history, one dynasty stands out for its extraordinary longevity, nearly 800 years. That was the Zhou Dynasty. We often hear Western Zhou and Eastern Zhou. That wasn't just a capital move-in, it marked a huge dividing line in Chinese civilization. Before it, the world followed a ritual and music order. After it came a chaotic era of warring states and competing philosophies. Let's start at the beginning. When King Wu of Zhou took the throne, he felt anything but relaxed. By rights, after defeating the last Shang king and standing on the ruins of the old capital, he should have been proud and triumphant. But when he looked at the map, his heart sank. The territory was enormous. From the area around today's Xi'an, all the way to Shandong, Henan, and Hebei. No trains, no phones, no messengers. Traveling from one end to the other took months. If one region stabilized, another might be on the verge of rebellion. By the time royal troops arrived, the crisis would already be over or the damage irreversible. So what do you do? If the king tried to personally control everything, the system would collapse. The Zhou rulers came up with a very smart solution: open chain stores. The Zhou king was the CEO of the main headquarters. All the territories across the land were branches or franchise stores. He sent his sons, brothers, nephews, and loyal ministers people like Jiang Ziya and the Duke of Zhou to different regions to set up local stores. These became the states we later know well: Qi, Lu, Jin, Yan, Wei, Zhen, and many more. The CEO laid out 4 major rules for his franchisees. The land and people are yours to manage. You run your region, but the brand stays unified. Don't forget, you're part of the Zhou network. Every year, you must return for the annual meeting, report to the king, and pay tribute. If anyone threatens the central headquarters, all branches must send troops back to protect it. This was the Fenjian, the feudal enfeoffment system. In simple terms, the state was divided into many family-run branches, each managed by a trusted relative. This allowed the Zhou dynasty to distribute power across the land without needing the king to personally micromanage every corner. But decentralization alone wasn't enough. Power always creates internal conflicts. So the Zhou clan installed a second system to ensure internal stability: the Zongfa, the ancestral clan hierarchy. The core rule of the clan system was simple and harsh. The throne must go to the legitimate eldest son, not the second son, not the most talented son, not the son of a concubine. only the eldest son of the primary wife. Other sons could be enfeoffed as regional lords. Sons of concubines had to fight for whatever they could get. This rule repeated layer upon layer, from the king down to local nobles. Political hierarchy and family hierarchy became one and the same. State and family were fused into a single structure. For the first several centuries, the Zhou Dynasty stayed stable because of this dual system. Enfeoffment distributed power outward. The clan system locked succession inward. Part 2. The Duke of Zhou and the Birth of a Culture, the Ritual and Music Civilization. But institutions alone were not enough. If you send people out to rule local territories, you must also regulate how they behave, how they lead, how they treat superiors, how they treat subordinates. If everyone acts according to personal mood and bias, the whole system collapses. This is when a key figure steps onto the stage. The Duke of Zhou. He was King Wu's younger brother. When King Wu died early, and his son King Chang was still young, the Duke of Zhou stepped in as regent, essentially managing the whole dynasty on behalf of his nephew. Some lords accused him of trying to steal the throne. He had to suppress rebellions while constantly proving he had no intention of usurping power. It was an extremely tense and dangerous period, yet it was during this volatile time that the Duke of Zhou created something that shaped Chinese civilization for 3,000 years. The system of Li and Yue, ritual and music. Many people hear ritual and picture a group of nobles in long robes bowing and performing ceremonies. But ritual was not a show. It was a complete instruction manual for life in the Zhou world. It spelled out everything: how to eat, how to conduct sacrifices, which chair you are allowed to sit in, how to greet elders, what patterns and colors of clothing each rank could wear, how many carriages could be used in a wedding depending on social status, even how many flags you could hang outside your gate. Everything was specified. A minor noble could not use the king's chariots. A regional lord could not use the king's ceremonial music. If you used anything above your rank, if you overstepped, you were in serious trouble. So what about Yue music? It wasn't entertainment. It worked together with ritual to shape moods and collective identity. Solemn music made people serious. Lively music warmed the atmosphere. Ritual set boundaries and order. Music created unity and emotion. This ritual and music system made the Zhou Dynasty the cultural center of East Asia, highly structured, rule-bound, and deeply refined. Later, Confucianism largely consisted of studying, restoring, and reinterpreting the system created by the Duke of Zhou. Part 3. When the reckless heir takes the throne, the collapse of the Western Zhou. Even the best system cannot survive a truly disastrous successor. And when it came to King Yu of Zhou, things went off the rails fast. This king pulled off one of the most dramatic stunts in Chinese history, the infamous beacon fire prank. Let's tell it again in a more casual, vivid way. King Yu Ha, a beloved concubine named Baosi. Historical records describe her as breathtakingly beautiful but extremely cold, a woman who could topple a kingdom, yet almost never smiled. King Yu was obsessed with her. He had only one thought in his mind: I must make her laugh. He tried everything: grand banquets, elaborate performances, precious gifts. Nothing worked. Bosi barely even lifted her eyelids. Then, a sycophantic minister named Guo Shifu came up with a creative idea. He said, Your Majesty, we have a national emergency system called the beacon towers. If an enemy attacks and we light the beacons, all the regional lords see the smoke and must immediately bring troops to defend the capital. If you light the beacons for no reason, all those lords will panic, grab their armor in the middle of the night, and rush hundreds of miles to save you. When they arrive and realize nothing happened, that they're just here as props for entertainment. Wouldn't that be hilarious? The queen will surely laugh. King, you knew it was a wicked idea, but he also thought it sounded fun. So, one night, the flames on Mount Li suddenly shot into the sky. All the lords saw the signal and were terrified. The capital is under attack. They raced through the night, dust-covered, exhausted, and fully armed, only to find there was no enemy. Up on the city tower, King Yu and Bao were drinking and watching the spectacle. Below them stood a crowd of humiliated lords, panting in confusion and anger. Bao looked at the scene and finally burst into laughter. But that laugh burned away the Zhou king's credibility. Later, when real invaders, the Quanrong tribes, attacked the capital, "King, you lit the beacons again?" This time, the lords thought, "Last time, you made fools of us? You think we forgot?" No one came. The capital fell. King Yu was killed. The Western Zhou was destroyed. You can summarize it to your listeners like this. This was the 3,000-year-old version of the boy who cried wolf. Once you destroy trust, no ritual system, no legal system, no ancestral hierarchy can save you. Part 4. From Western Zhou to Eastern Zhou. When the CEO goes bankrupt and the managers start fighting, after the Western Zhou fell, King Yu's son, King Ping, was placed on the throne. Looking around at the devastated homeland in the west, he knew he couldn't hold it anymore. So he moved the capital eastward, closer to today's Luoyang. This relocation marked the beginning of the Eastern Zhou, but from that moment on, the Zhou king's power changed dramatically. On paper, he was still the son of heaven, the ruler of all under heaven. In reality, his territory was small, his troops weak, and his treasury thin. He became a CEO in name only. The real strength now belonged to the regional lords, the franchise owners who had already grown powerful on their own. During the spring and autumn period, these local bosses began pushing boundaries. At first, they still pretended to be polite. Powerful lords like Duke Wan of Qi and Duke Wan of Jin emerged as hegemons. They carried a noble slogan: respect the king and repel the barbarians. In other words, we're expanding our influence not for ourselves, but to help the Zhou king maintain order. It was like someone today saying, "I'm doing this for the company, for the greater good." But everyone knew they were paving the way for their own power. By the Warring States period, even that thin veneer of politeness was gone. 7 major Stichin, Chu, Qi, Yan, Zhao, Han, Wei openly competed with one goal: consume all rivals and become the ultimate winner. The brutality of war escalated sharply. Battles killed tens or hundreds of thousands. In events like the Battle of Changping, entire groups of captives were massacred. The world became a boiling cauldron of blood. Part 5. Chaos creates genius. The age of 100 schools of thought. But history is rarely pure darkness. The more chaotic the politics, the more explosive the ideas. After the shift into Eastern Zhou, especially during the spring and autumn and Warring States periods, China entered an age of intense intellectual creativity. This was the famous era of the 100 schools of thought. The old order had collapsed. The old answers no longer worked. Someone had to propose new ones. Why did the world fall into chaos? How can order be rebuilt? What is the right way to live? How should a ruler treat the people? Are there rules for war? And so, a brilliant group of thinkers stepped onto the stage. Confucius, Laozi, Mozi, Zhuangzi, Hanfizi, Sunzi. They shared a common identity. Not nobles, not peasants, but knowledge-based wanderers who traveled between states, offering ideas and strategies. You can help your listeners remember them by dividing them into 3 camps. First group, the idealists, represented by Confucianism. Confucius looked at the chaos and said, "The rituals are not the problem. The problem is that you abandoned them and lost your moral compass." He wanted to restore the orderly, humane world of the early Western Zhou. Second group, the retreatists, represented by Taoism. Laozi and Zhuangzi said, "The harder you try to control the world, the worse it becomes. The best order is the one that governs least and follows nature." They questioned not just political systems, but civilization itself. Third group, the realists and the cold strategists, legalists and military thinkers. Hanfizi said, "Human nature is selfish. Don't dream of perfect sages." Sunzi focused entirely on the reality of war. If life is kill or be killed, then I want to know how to win. These schools argued for centuries, but in that long argument, the foundational structure of Chinese thought took shape. Part 6. From the Zhou Dynasty to the Book of Songs, 3 Cultural Treasures. Looking back at the Zhou Dynasty's 800 years, several clear threads emerge. Politically, China moved from a world built on feudal infrarument and clan hierarchy to an era of competing states and the 7 warring kingdoms. Culturally, it shifted from the Duke of Zhou's ritual land music order to the intellectual explosion of the 100 schools of thought. Militarily, it evolved from regional lords assisting the king in battle to highly professional armies and systematic military strategy. If we choose 3 books to represent the Zhou Dynasty's long-lasting impact, they would be: first, representing the foundation of civilization, the Book of Songs, the Shijing. Second, representing breakthrough in thought, the philosophies of Confucius, Laozi, and other great thinkers. Third, representing practical strategy, the art of war. This is, of course, simplified, but it's a very intuitive way for listeners to remember. Next, let's focus on the earliest and most gentle of the 3, the Shijing, Part 7, entering the Book of Songs, not about gods, but about the human heart. Let me give you an image to step into the world of the Shijing. Imagine a poetry collection older than the Iliad and the Odyssey. A book not about gods or epic heroes, but about the real heartbeat and breath of ordinary people who lived 3,000 years ago. Farmers working in the fields, soldiers longing for home, girls blushing at first love, young couples marrying, having children, saying farewell to parents, court, banquets, and music, people's awe, fear, and questions about nature and the heavens. That book is the Shijing. It took shape from the Western Zhou to the Spring and Autumn period, roughly the 11th to 6th centuries BC. It wasn't written by one author in a quiet study. It was collected, piece by piece, from the voices of the people. In the Zhou Dynasty, there was a system called collecting songs. Officials were sent out to gather the songs ordinary people sang. Work chants during harvest, wedding songs, complaints and frustrations, soldiers' homesick tunes. These songs were written down, arranged into formal musical pieces, and eventually presented to the king. Why did they do this? Because rulers wanted to understand the true feelings of their people. Were taxes too heavy? Were commoners living well or suffering? Were local officials abusing power? Was the war effort exhausting the people? In this sense, the Shijing is an emotional version of a public opinion report. Its authenticity is often higher than later historical records. Part 8. The 3 windows of the Shijing, Feng, Ya, and Song. To make it easy to remember, think of the Shijing as 3 windows, each opening to a different world. The first window is Feng, the heirs of the states. The second is Ya, including the lesser court hymns and greater court hymns. The third is Song, ceremonial hymns. Let's start with Feng. Feng originally referred to musical styles, but later also meant customs and local character. The heirs of the states contain over 160 songs from 15 different regions. This section is the most vivid, down-to-earth part of the Shijing. You'll find young men and women falling in love, girls hiding behind doors, listening for a lover's footsteps, wives complaining that their husbands never return from war, farmers protesting exhausting labor duties, women washing clothes while lamenting the hardships of life. These were popular songs of their time, never intended to be classics, just people's emotions captured by history. Some belong to Zhounan and Shaonan. Zhou here is not a dynasty name, but originally a place name. South of Mount Qi, in today's Baoji area of Shaanxi, the birthplace of the early Zhou. After King Wu founded the dynasty, the territory expanded. Under King Cheng, the Duke of Zhou and the Duke of Shao jointly governed the eastern and western regions. The folk songs from the Duke of Zhou's region were gathered together as Zhou Nan. So when we read Zhou Nan and Shao Nan, we are looking directly into the earliest, most central heartland of the Zhou. Their love stories, wedding customs, and everyday life. Part 9. Have the Shijing writes narrative, comparison, and evocation. The importance of the Shijing lies not only in what it records, but how it expresses emotion. In this ancient collection, 3 writing methods appear clearly for the first time. First method, Fu, direct narration. State what happened and how you feel. No detours. Second method. By metaphor. Use natural images, flowers, birds, plants, to express human emotions and virtues. Third method. Shang. Evocative imagery. Begin with a scene that seems unrelated, then let it naturally lead into the emotion. Clouds drifting in the sky, rivers flowing below. It sounds like weather, but it's preparing you for I miss you, I resent you, or I wait for you. These three techniques later became the blueprint of all Chinese poetry. Han folk songs, Temps poems, song lyrics, even many modern songs still follow this logic. State it plainly, use metaphor, or start with scenery and then reveal the feeling. The Xijing also shaped Chinese emotional aesthetics that it values subtle, restrained expression. Instead of shouting, I love you, it writes, Guan Guan, cried the ospreys on the river islet. On the surface, it's about birds. In truth, it means, look at those paired birds. That's the kind of love I long for. Part 10. Using Guanru to see how the ancients expressed love. Let's look at the most famous poem in the Xijing Guanru. It's essential to include the original lines in your episode. 关关雎鸠，在河之洲。窈窕淑女，君子好逑。We're not doing academic translation, only clear narrative explanation. Guan, guan is an onomatopoeic sound, the call of water birds. The juju bird was believed to have one lifelong partner, a symbol of loyalty and stable affection. During breeding season, the pair meets on a sandbar in the river, calling to each other. So the poem begins with a picture, not with people, a calm river, a sandbar in the middle, a pair of birds calling in harmony. Only then does it reveal the theme. There is a graceful, gentle young woman, the perfect match for a nobleman. This is classic Shang. Start with an image, then shift naturally into emotion. Later, the poem mentions shanka water plants with round floating leaves. The young man doesn't jump into the river and try to grab them. He gently stirs the water from the bank, letting the current bring the plants toward him. This mirrors the way he pursues the woman. Not forceful, not aggressive, but patient and sincere. Daytime, he thinks of her. At night, she fills his dreams. When he gathers the water plants, his hands are on the plants, but his heart is on her. In the end, he hopes not only to win her love, but to build a life with her. As harmonious as the strings of the zither, as joyful as bells and drums at a wedding. You can summarize it this way in your show. In simple terms, Guanru is about a noble young man who falls for a gentle, beautiful woman. He thinks of her all day and dreams of her all night. Even when he gathers water plants, his heart is with her, not the plants. He pursues her with honesty and patience, not just wanting romance, but wanting to marry her, to live a long, steady, warm life together, from everyday harmony to the music of a wedding ceremony. Part 11. Peach blossoms, brides to be, and the season of spring. In ancient Chinese poetry, young women are often compared to peach blossoms. Why peach blossoms and not some other flower? It has a lot to do with timing. In the Zhou Dynasty, there was a custom. Every spring, when the weather turned warm and flowers began to bloom, the authorities would organize gatherings for unmarried young men and women at set times and places. They played games, got to know each other, developed feelings, and then talked about marriage. Spring is the season of growth, symbolizing new life, hope, and fertility. And peach blossoms just happened to bloom right then. So in a poem says, peach trees, young and glowing, blossoms blazing bright. It's not just describing a random tree. What it is really saying is, look at this moment in the year. The peach blossoms are in full bloom, just like a girl who has reached marrying age, at the most radiant point of her life, ready to start a new family. For Chinese listeners, this metaphor feels very natural. For foreign listeners who don't know the cultural background, you might need to explain a bit. It's not about objectifying women. It's about using the freshest, most vibrant images in nature to talk about human growth and the turning points of a person's life. Part 12. The Xijing, idioms, and the traps of literal translation. There's another fun way, the the Xijing influences later generations. Many Chinese idioms and ways of describing things can be traced back to its vocabulary and imagery. But if you translate those idioms literally, you can easily create misunderstandings or just make people laugh for the wrong reasons. You can pick a few to share with your listeners. This kind of segment works well as a lighter part of your show. Take 鸠占鹊巢 as an example. It means someone grabs a place, a house, or a resource that originally belonged to someone else. A very negative expression. If you translate it word for word into English as a dove occupies a magpie's nest, for an English speaker, that's just one bird taking another bird's nest. It sounds almost cute. The sense of unjust seizure disappears. A more natural translation would be to take over someone's place, or you could use a similar Western image, a cuckoo in the nest, which is closer to the underlying idea in European culture. Another example, 狐假虎威. Literally, it's about a fox borrowing the tiger's power to scare other animals. A metaphor for someone with no real ability using connections or authority to bully others. If you translate it as a fox borrows a tiger's fierceness, the meaning is technically there, but it sounds stiff and unnatural in English. More idiomatic options would be to ride on someone's coattails or to bask in someone's reflected glory. Then there's 井底之蛙, a frog at the bottom of a well. It describes someone with a narrow view of the world, who thinks the small piece of sky they see is all that exists. If you just say a frog at the bottom of a well, your listener might either miss the point or think you are telling a children's story. Closer equivalents would be to have a blinkered view of the world or simply narrow-minded. Or you can keep the image and say a frog in a well, but you must add a brief explanation of the meaning da. Another one, 螳螂捕蝉,黄雀在后. Its core idea is someone focuses only on the prey in front of them, unaware that an even bigger danger is right behind. If you translate it word for word as the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, you do get the picture. But without the cultural story, the sense of warning is very weak. A simpler, closer equivalent would be, there's always a bigger fish. You think you are the hunter, but you may just be someone else's prey. You can remind your listeners, behind many Chinese idioms lies a very Xijing-style way of thinking, explaining moral lessons and life situations through vivid images of animals, plants, and landscapes. If you only translate the literal words, you often lose that deeper layer of cultural metaphor. Part 13. Conclusion. From the Zhou Dynasty to the Xijing. From the Xijing to today. In this episode, we started from the mythic world of investiture of the gods. We walked through King Wu's campaign against the Shang, the Duke of Zhou's system of ritual and music, the Zhou clan's feudal and clan structures, then watched King Yu's beacon fire prank, the fall of the Western Zhou. The turmoil of the Eastern Zhou, the wars of the spring and autumn, and warring states periods, and the intellectual battles of the 100 schools of thought. Across this long history, several forces were quietly fomenting, eventually becoming the foundation tone of Chinese civilization, using ritual and music to maintain order and cultivate character, using poetry to record emotion and daily life, using debates and competing ideas to search for better answers, using military strategy and institutions to face a brutal reality. Within all this, the Xijing played a very special role that it was not just a textbook for kings, and not only a set of hymns for the gods. It recorded the emotions of ordinary people living under that vast historical sky. Young men and women meeting by the river, farmers bending over their fields in the blazing sun, women waiting at night for husbands to return, soldiers standing at distant borders, staring toward home. People complaining about hardship, others celebrating weddings and harvests, some testing the waters of love, others worrying about their country. All these voices blend together into a 3,000-year-old emotional archive. So the Xijing is much more than an ancient poetry collection. It is the starting point of Chinese literature, a kind of encyclopedia of everyday life in the Zhou Dynasty, and a source that later thinkers and writers returned to again and again. If you want to understand Chinese emotion, aesthetics, and ways of expression. Why Chinese people often express feelings through scenery. Why they rarely say things too directly. Why so many idioms involve animals and plants. Then, starting with the Shijing is a solid and reliable choice. In the coming episodes, we'll take out one classic poem after another and look at them in detail. The restrained love in Guanru. Marriage and household life in Jatan. Distant longing and pursuit in Gian, Gia. And poems about war, labor, parting, and reunion. Once you really step into these poems, you'll find the people from 3,000 years ago were not so different from us. They loved and feared, hoped and despaired, and started over again just as we do. They sang their lives into the Shijing. We are simply fortunate that we can still hear those voices today. But emotion is only one side of civilization. Along the same Zhou timeline, two other currents were also growing. One asked, how should the world work at its core? This became the path represented by the Dao De Jing. The other asked, given harsh reality, how do we survive and win? This became the path of the art of war. If the Shijing answers, how do people feel about the world? Then the Dao De Jing asks, what are the underlying rules of this world? And the art of war answers, given those rules, how should we act? In the next episode, we will shift our focus from the songs of the Shijing to two other works born in the same great age. One is the Dao De Jing, a book of only about 5,000 characters, yet bold enough to question the established order of civilization. The other is The Art of War, a book studied in military academies around the world, but whose insights go far beyond the battlefield into society, strategy, and competition. We'll talk about what exactly was Lao Tzu opposing? Is his non-action really about doing nothing? When Sun Wu wrote The Art of War, was he only thinking about warfare, or about all forms of conflict and power struggles in society? And we'll ask, are these three Bukshijing, Dao De Jing, and The Art of War spread islands? Or are they, in fact, three different answers from the same long river of civilization? So if, in this episode, the Shijing helped you hear the heartbeat of ordinary people 3,000 years ago, then, in the next episode, we'll listen to how the thinkers and strategists of that same age used a few thousand characters to write a user's guide for understanding and surviving in this world. See you next time! Easter egg: Daily life of ancient Chinese people. Today's topic in daily life in ancient China is, how did people in ancient China go to the bathroom? Don't laugh. You might think toilets are a small matter, but they actually hide a lot of secrets about the evolution of human civilization. So let's just chat, relax, and travel back a few thousand years to see how ancient people handled this very real, very universal part of life. Let's start from the very beginning. In extremely ancient times, going to the bathroom basically meant digging a hole in the ground, outdoors, completely exposed. You squatted by the edge, and whenever the wind blew, well, you can imagine the experience. And yes, if you weren't careful, you could fall in. And this isn't just a joke. Someone really did fall in fact, a king. During the spring and autumn period, Duke Jing of Jin suddenly fell ill while using the toilet, lost his balance, and toppled straight into the pit. He didn't survive. As ridiculous as it sounds, this is recorded in official history. He is probably the only ruler in Chinese history who literally died in the toilet. Eventually, people realized, okay, we can't keep doing this. So by the Han Dynasty, Chinese people invented something quite ingenious: a toilet built directly above a pigsty. Yes, you heard that right. The waste dropped straight down and became pig food. This setup was called a Han Si, a combo toilet pigpen system. You might wonder, wasn't that filthy? Actually, ancient people were very practical. Toilets and pigpens were both dirty anyway. Why not combine them? Human waste was valuable fertilizer. Building the toilet above the pigpen saved space. Sounds eco-friendly, right? Well, the downside was serious. Pigs could get infected by parasites from human waste. So the Han Si was one of those clever but dangerous inventions. Now that we've covered toilets, let's talk about wiping. This is the part everyone is curious about. Modern toilet paper has only been around for a little over 100 years. So what did ancient Chinese people use? The earliest solution was something called chechu. What was that? Picture this. A thin wooden stick or bamboo strip, about 20 to 30 centimeters long, roughly the length of a ruler, about as wide as a finger, slightly thicker than a popsicle stick, a bit rough on the surface, not sharp, but let's say the texture was memorable. Yes, ancient people used that. They scraped and wiped with that little wooden paddle. Archaeologists have found actual chechu in Xinjiang and Gansu, with very real traces of use still on them. If you're getting vivid images in your mind right now, you're welcome. Besides chechu, people also used leaves, straw, smooth stones, even lumps of soil. Makes you appreciate the soft toilet paper in your hand right now, doesn't it? Some people might ask, but paper existed in the Han Dynasty. Why not use that? The answer is simple. Paper was valuable. It was for writing, not wiping. Using it in the bathroom was like burning money. Paper didn't truly become a wiping tool until after the Yuan Dynasty, when paper production increased and prices dropped. Only then did people start thinking, this texture might actually work. But they still took it seriously. According to the history of Yuan, before the empress used toilet paper, her maid had to test the softness by pressing it against her own face. Yes, you heard that right. Ancient people invented user experience testing long before the tech world did. By the Ming and Qing dynasties, toilet paper became more common. Some families even cut it into neat little circles, as described in Dream of the Red Chamber. That shows how completely paper had entered everyday life. But don't think civilization stopped there. Toilet paper spread. But the toilet industry was just getting started. What we now call sanitation workers were known in ancient times as Fenfu, literally poop collectors. Their job was very straightforward. Go door to door, empty everyone's night pots, and haul this precious resource to the countryside to sell as fertilizer. Sounds tough, right? But it was actually a very profitable business. Because, believe it or not, what people produced reflected what they ate. Rich families ate better, so their output had higher nutritional value. That meant stronger fertilizer and a higher selling price. So Fenfu often fought over luxury routes, just like modern delivery drivers competing for wealthy neighborhoods. In Beijing, Fenfu became a well-organized profession with unions and designated territories. Some even sold their collection rights, like business licenses. In Shanghai, they had a nickname Dao Laoi, meaning the ones who empty the gentlemen's pots. Surprisingly, classy. This entire industry continued until modern flush toilets finally became common, and with that, the Fenfu disappeared, and toilets moved into a new era, bright, clean, quiet, and comfortable enough that people now bring their phones in. From open pits to Hansi, from tiger-shaped chamber pots, to chechu, to soft toilet paper, all the way to the modern toilet, humanity spent thousands of years improving this tiny corner of daily life. And the progress of toilets is, in many ways, the progress of civilization itself. A clean, safe toilet is one of the clearest measures of how developed a society is. So next time you think of ancient life, imagine the cold wind over an open pit, the hardcore texture of a wooden scraper, the pungent smell of a Hansi, and Fenfu pushing carts of human fertilizer through old Beijing streets. Suddenly, the modern bathroom feels like the biggest gift civilization ever gave us. And that is the full story of how ancient Chinese people went to the bathroom.
Pengu raised the sky in light, Nua healed the broken heart, Fuxi traced the world's design. Every age leaves stories bright. Yaya Dynasty shaped bronze, Shang Dynasty cast oracle bones. The page leave stories bright. History and myth ignite in endless light. China's history moves in mystery through the night. Footsteps of this land enchant the world in light. Kingdoms dynasty turn war to tales. Qin dynasty led ink and mountains bloom. Zhou dynasty carved the Grand Canal. Tang dynasty crowned the world with art. Song dynasty raised learn